The sense of smell has that amazing ability, which we must never forget, to conjure up memories and emotions, and fine fragrances are products that make us dream. They're beautiful, they're aspiring, they're transporting, and they are full of magic. And every time we do creative sessions with consumers, I'm always amazed by the depth of feeling that people have for their products and what it gives them emotionally. You know, I heard the other day, it's my pretty smell that makes me feel happy, bubbly, like life is good. Or it makes me feel sexy and confident, excited to go to work. It is definitely a frame of mind it gets me into. You know, those are strong impacts that our products have. And our mission together, our mission has to be to ensure that consumers remain enchanted and that we create products that allow that magic to happen. And we have to do that through innovation, through new ingredients, through the quality of the craftsmanship, and I believe that what we do is about quality craftsmanship, about great stories, innovation in packaging and formulas. But what I think is important in keeping the magic is that it's not about harking back to some old school way of doing things. You know, there is a real modern craftsmanship that is very, very important, I think, for the future of the perfume industry. So, my next point is about the resurgence of quality. And as part of the drive to keep this magic, I think that we see very clearly this need, and we're seeing in the market this resurgence in the quality of the products. Now, most obviously, we've seen that in the tremendous growth of niche brands and niche products, led by fantastic brands like Jo Malone, like Tom Ford, like Serge Lutens, and many, many more. And these products have given to a group of elite consumers the opportunity to have more exclusive fragrances, you know, with the highest quality ingredients, etc. And they meet this need for luxury craftsmanship, for the sensation of kind of discovering something unique and something that is personal to you and not every day and not for everyone. So I think that it shows that consumers are willing to pay for this experience. It shows that our category is in fact a very vibrant one, that these niche products can be growing at 12–15% per annum, and people are willing to pay that money for products that they really believe is going to give them something. But at the same time as niche, I think we also see many of the designer brands in fragrances investing more into their products, investing specifically into the juices, and recognizing that this is what brings consumers back to buy again. And this is what creates that attachment, that loyalty. And I'm sure that we are going to see a continuance, therefore, in the resurgence of quality in fragrances. Next is developing markets. And I deliberately choose this picture of the cathedral in Brasilia, which was designed by the great Brazilian architect Oscar Niemeyer, to illustrate, in fact, how sophisticated so-called developing markets are today. And we're all well aware of the growth of fragrances in Latin America, and particularly in Brazil, and the fact that Brazil is the #1 fragrance market in the world. But as we look to the future, I'd like to make 2 points. The first one is that I am very convinced that we will see not only the commercial impact of these developing markets, but their creative influence spread as well. When you go to Brazil and when you go to Latin America, there are fantastic companies making great products. And they're making products which have a unique, mainly Brazilian, but not just Brazilian, style. And I'm sure that that style is something that will continue to spread, which it hasn't done a lot until now outside of Brazil, and we will see the influence of that spread into more international markets and outside. So that's the first point. And the second point I want to make on developing markets is that we have in front of us a huge opportunity in Asia. And whenever anyone's feeling a little bit gloomy about the market growth of the fine fragrance business and looking at the MPD figures and seeing the declines in unit volumes, I say to them, you only need to look at how nascent a market we have in Asia to feel a lot better about the prospects of the market for the next 10, 15, 20 years in fine fragrances. And when I travel to countries like India, to Indonesia, to Malaysia, to Philippines, these are places where there's an enormous desire for perfume. There's a real olfactive culture in these markets, and there is a very significant local market, sort of in, bazaars and malls and so on there. There's a very significant market already. So I think that the growth of Asia is very significantly going to influence the creation and the commerce of the fine fragrance business in the future. And in fact, in Givaudan now, we've had big presences in Asia for years and years, but mainly focused on creating fragrances for shampoos and for toilet soaps and for detergents. And now we put dedicated perfumers into Singapore, into India, specifically for fine fragrances. And I think it's our responsibility to help create those markets and encourage quality products and the development of a market, a local market, rather than just the importation of international brands. My next point is on natural ingredients. And Joe mentioned that I was going to talk a bit about sustainability, and here it is. And the need that we have to protect natural ingredients in the future. So naturals form an integral part of fine perfumery. They give, as an ingredient in a perfume, in combination with synthetics, they give quality, they give depth and richness. They are the noble ingredients. They often have fantastic provenance, where there are these great stories of, people picking jasmine at 6 o'clock in the morning before the sun gets too hot, or, fields in Morocco where there's orange flower. I mean, they're truly inspirational sort of places and stories behind it. And it's real craftsmanship is how you extract beautiful qualities of naturals. There's a real savoir-faire in that. But they are under threat for two reasons. The first reason is because our naturals, even the ones that we use most in the industry, such as patchouli. Patchouli is the natural ingredient most used in the fragrance industry, notably in Angel by Thierry Mugler and many other products. But our naturals are tiny crops compared to other crops which farmers around the world have the opportunity to plant for food, wheat, palm, all of these other things. And that means that as the world population is growing, as urbanization is increasing, our crops are increasingly squeezed out. And therefore we have to work, and I'll explain how, to make sure their existence remains. And the second threat, and it is ironic, given the consumer perception that natural is good, comes from regulatory pressures. And regulatory pressures, in fact, threaten our ability to use natural ingredients more than they do synthetic ingredients. So these threats mean that we have to work together to protect naturals. And we can do that, and we have to do it in two ways. Firstly, we need to invest in the long term in communities which are growing our crops, and with the farmers, so that we build sustainable supply chains that provide strong and stable incomes for people, and that they are therefore motivated to stay with our fragrances. A few years ago, the industry had a pretty tough time, and everyone reduced, including the fragrance houses, reduced their stocks, reduced everything. And that meant we didn't buy as much. And if you're a farmer, somewhere in Laos, and suddenly for 1 year, a fragrance house or an industry says, you know what, we don't need to buy any benzoin anymore for a year. That leaves you with no income. So we have to make these commitments to our farmers, to these communities over the long term. And at Givaudan, we have a program supported by the Givaudan Foundation called Communities at Source. And we have been setting up projects for the last 10 years, whether tonka in Venezuela, benzoin in Laos, ilang in the Comoros Islands, and there were some of them running on a video downstairs. Vetiver in Haiti, to name a few. These are individual projects that we have to do. So on the regulatory part, the industry has to work together here. And I think the industry has been working much better together in recent years, but we have to work together with lawmakers in a constructive way and in other groups to ensure that we have, firstly, the right approach to risk assessment. That we take the right approach to understanding what risk there may be, and secondly, to promote an understanding amongst lawmakers and other groups of the rich heritage and the crucial role they play in our industry. My fifth point is rather technical fragrance house perspective on advanced fragrance design, but I think it's worth sharing with you. And I will start with a little analogy. Around 20 years ago, a company called Pixar, owned by Steve Jobs, totally revolutionized the creation of animated cartoons, animated TV shows and movies, which up until then had been made essentially by drawings on paper and suddenly became computer-generated, CGI. And so we had Toy Story, so we had Cars and Monsters, Inc. and Frozen and whatever else there is. And this was a revolution because of design tools. Storytelling was still the same, but it was the design that really enabled a new movement in animated films. And so in perfumery, I believe we start to open up the future of perfume design, where intelligent tools are actually giving to perfumers fantastic opportunities now to enhance their creativity, to bring in different inspirations, to enhance as well the technical design. And I think that as we look to the future, that's going to open up new opportunities in perfume creation. And it's not just in creation, it's also in how we actually develop and assess perfumes. And if I give one other example, at Givaudan we have built a way to measure the trail, the sillage of a fragrance. And you all know how important for a successful perfume to have comments from people who smell it in the air. And traditionally when we design fragrances, we smell them on the blotter, we smell them on the skin. But the third dimension, the air, is very difficult to quantify. And so these types of advances allow us to design and to improve the craftsmanship for a future generation. And my final point, the world of the internet has brought us to a new relationship with consumers which we're only just scratching the surface of. And it's very exciting to me to see new online models like the Perfume Society, which connect people, bring fantastic content, allow for this interaction, and that can only be good for the whole industry. And I really believe that that will continue in the future. We also see the emergence of new technologies, the emergence of things like the O-phone, which allows you to send sent messages via telephones, and the Selfridges and the future laboratory created fragrance lab, which was in Selfridges, which I won't say any more on, but which I think was another fantastic consumer experience, which helps to drive enthusiasm and excitement for our business. So with that, I want to conclude. I believe that the future of fragrances has so much to offer to consumers in the future, and I'll now leave it to the other speakers.